Welcome to this episode of Mandatory Bookings, where I'll be taking you through some key match incidents of a game that I recently refereed in the Middlesex County League between Camden and Islington and Eaglesland Cricklewood. Most people think that we referees just come out of our houses to rack up fines for the counties, but here's an incident I was presented with just 7 minutes into this game. As you can see, the player in the blue just made a foul on the player in the orange. Now, in my book, that's a late challenge any day of the week. The players tried to protest it, but for me, no matter what time of the game it is, whether it's early on or late on in the game, it's a mandatory yellow card.
Mandatory yellow.
It's clearly nothing to argue about. The player in the blue has clearly missed the ball. He's caught the player 100%, and in my match report that goes down as a C1. I've titled this next clip, How Not to Take a Throw-In. What you're about to witness here is classic schoolboy stuff. Now this is what they should be teaching you when you're in primary school.
How to take a throw-in properly.
I feel equally embarrassed for having to award this decision because when I'm officiating at a more senior level, what we call non-league football, people don't pay money to watch referees award things like this. Nevertheless, I'm here to apply the laws of the game and it needed to be done. If there was a video textbook for mandatory yellow cards, then this would definitely be one of them. I mean, it doesn't get any clearer than that, does it? Funny enough, the reason why it took me so long to get into this clip is because as I was going over to book the player, I had to stop because one of the players was trying to have a whole conversation with me not to book their player. But I said to him, come on mate, you gotta be kidding me, right? Nevertheless, here we have another example of a
mandatory yellow.
And take note of this situation. Even though he's done a silly thing, you can still book a player with dignity. Referees still have to earn respect, and we do that by the way we handle situations. Now this next challenge that you're about to see here is just straight up naughty. The ball was clearly not there to be won. The player in the orange made a cynical challenge, making no attempt to actually play the ball. If you're a player and you make a challenge like this, you can definitely expect any referee will be reaching into their pocket for another
mandatory yellow.
I titled this next clip, Control Yourself. One of my pet hates is when somebody tells me, oh ref, you killed the game. As a referee, we can only deal with the situations that we are presented with. So of course, if you do something dumb, you end up getting a
mandatory yellow.
Here we have another example of someone doing something dumb. In the world of refereeing, we would describe this as breaking up a promising attack. The player in the orange had fouled the player in the blue by pushing him over as he was making a threatening attack towards the opposition's goal. This was an interesting incident and something that we would describe as a key match incident. The blue team had scored in what was potentially a match winner. However, the player that scored didn't realise that me, my assistant and everybody else had seen him flick the ball with his hand, which was in an unnatural position, onto his head as he headed the ball into the goal. I had a clear view of the incident. However, it was one of those things where I just couldn't even believe it myself that he'd even done that. Even though I was absolutely clear in my mind that I was going to disallow the goal, it was still important that I checked with my assistant on the near side just to ensure that he saw the same thing that I saw. There's no VAR in grassroots football, so it's important that I take my time to get these decisions correct. Throughout this incident, you'll probably notice that I took my sweet time taking a slow walk over to my assistant. That's not because I'm lazy or anything like that, but it's because I wanted to give myself adequate thinking time, and I also wanted to allow enough time for any rising tensions to die. This is a game management technique that's frequently used by match officials at all levels of football. Good refereeing has so many different elements, but effective man management is a crucial part of that. After making it clear to everybody that I was disallowing the goal, I also then needed to caution the player who scored the goal for the deliberate handball offence, which was a
mandatory yellow.
I appreciate that the angle of the video doesn't actually articulate what I saw on the day. However, I've tried to point this out as slowly and carefully as possible. And if I just rewind this clip like they do on Match of the Day, what you can just about make out from this video angle is the player in the blue's left arm is extended above his head But what you can't see in the video, unfortunately, is the player in the blue uses his left hand and brushes the ball in front of his head just before he headers the ball into the goal. His arms being up in the air is open for interpretation. Some will argue that it is a natural position, some will argue that it isn't. However, it's the brushing of the ball with his left hand that makes it a cautionable offence, and that's ultimately why the goal was disallowed. Now here we have another key match incident. At this stage of the game, tensions are starting to run high. We're in the dying moments of the game. It's 1-1. Both teams still feel like they can win it. The ball comes flying in. The ball's there to be won. However, the keeper gets it first. The attacker from the blue team, who I just cautioned for the previous incident. However, in the case of the attacker, his eyes were only on the ball, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt because I did feel that it wasn't intentional that he went into the goalkeeper. But as I said, tensions were starting to run high, and clearly it was running too high for the orange number 6 because he felt the need to kick the player in the blue team on the head while he was on the floor. Again, it's unfortunate that the angle of the video didn't capture this incident fully. The player in the orange that's walking just across the outside of the 6-yard box blocks the view in the moment that the incident took place. However, one thing that you can actually appreciate in this grassroots game of football is that we're in Hackney Marshes and then there's a group of people walking by. But they had a clear view of the incident, perhaps even better than me. But you can tell by their reactions and their body actions that something untoward has taken place. In fact, they were already screaming everything out as it was happening, although I was standing on the edge of the 18-yard box and had a clear view of this myself. Which is why in this instance I quickly showed the red card. Incidents like these can often quickly escalate into what we would call a mass confrontation, which is where you'd have both sets of players quickly coming together and erupting into a fight. So as the referee in this situation, my main priority at this point would be to isolate the perpetrator and get him out of the hot zone as quickly as possible to avoid any further flare-ups. What this also does is it enhances my position of authority in this situation. The reason that is because as the referee, I've now given out the worst possible punishment I can give on the field of play. So the offence itself is dealt with. However much it may frustrate anybody else on the pitch, it's dealt with. It presents everybody with a choice, and if they're here to play football, then they'll get on with it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of
Mandatory yellow.
And a big shout out to Camden Islington for sharing the video with me. Big up yourself.